Hello everyone. Thank you for coming here today. I really appreciate you coming to listen to my presentation and everyone's presentation. It means a lot to show that you guys care about our passions and that you're willing to become involved. So today, I'll be presenting on diversity, equity, and inclusion, also known as DEI, specifically in higher education. I've already established my name is Tiffany Zhang, and I'd like to thank my mentor, Jacob Bennett, who I've met almost every week to work on this presentation and this project. And all of credit goes to him for motivating me, helping me, and doing the best that he could. So before we begin, who am I? My name is Tiffany Zhang. I'm currently a senior at Arcadia High School, and I'm an incredibly passionate speaker. In the first image, I'm at a speaker event in person, and it was really hot, but it was super, super fun. I'm looking to stay informed, help others stay informed, and do my best to make a difference in this world through this presentation and through my daily life. So, with introductions out of the way, let's get started. We'll look at what DEI actually means, how it developed over time, and the major role it has played on college campuses. Then we'll turn to programs and the current political backlash against DEI, especially in states like Florida and North Carolina. And finally, I'll end with what these changes mean for students, universities, and the future of higher education. The big question guiding this presentation and what I want you to keep in mind is how have recent political actions affected the structure and effectiveness of DEI programs in US colleges? But before we dive into the bigger picture, let's make sure we're clear on what DEI actually means. According to the National Association of Diversity Officers in Higher Education, diversity refers to the range of differences in backgrounds, identities, and experiences, including but not limited to race, ethnicity, gender, age, religion, language, ability, sexual orientation, and socioeconomic status. These identities may intersect and face barriers within society. Equity is the process of addressing and removing structural barriers that limit access or participation, especially for historically underrepresented groups, to ensure fairness and opportunity and justice in institutions and systems. Finally, inclusion is the intentional effort to create environments where all people feel welcomed, respected, supported, and able to fully participate, while eliminating practices that marginalize individuals or groups. Together, DEI programs are designed to create fairer, more supportive environments where students from all backgrounds can thrive. So now that we've defined DEI, let's take a look at why these programs became such an important part of higher education. DEI matters in higher education because higher education has a long history of inequality. For most of US history, colleges excluded women, people of color, and low-income students. DEI efforts are meant to correct these systematic barriers. Secondly, these programs give underrepresented students resources and opportunities, such as scholarships, mentoring, or cultural centers, that help level the playing field for everyone. And third, DEI isn't just about fairness, it also benefits all students by preparing them for today's workforce. Research from McKinsey and Company shows that they produce measurable benefits, saying that companies with more executive level gender, ethnic, and cultural diversity had significantly higher profitability relative to other peers. Additionally, according to the brief for major American business enterprises of 2022, business leaders have stated that a diverse university culture prepares students for success in a global workforce. As such, a college environment that reflects the real world helps students build the skills they'll need after graduation. But now you may be wondering, how do DEI programs get their start in higher education? To answer that, we need to look back to the civil rights era. DEI programs grew out of the civil rights movement in the 1950s and the 1960s. Court decisions like Brown v. Board of Education and laws like the Civil Rights Act of 1964 required schools to stop discriminating. Federal executive orders in the 1960s also pushed affirmative action, which required federal contractors, including many universities, to begin promoting diversity. But it wasn't just laws. Student activism also played a huge role in the origins of DEI. In 1968, the Third World Liberation Front, consisting of a coalition of Black, Asian American, Chicano, and Native American students, held strikes at San Francisco State and UC Berkeley. They demanded ethnic study programs and greater representation. These strikes created the nation's first ethnic studies departments and forced college to recognize the importance of inclusion. Over time, DEI has expanded beyond race to cover gender, sexuality, disability, and more, showing how student activism and social change continue to shape higher education. From these beginnings, DEI steadily grew and became a standard part of college life. So let's take a look at how that's happened. Well, by the 1980s and the 1990s, many universities had official DEI offices. These offices were often led by chief diversity officers and focused on hiring diverse faculty, recruiting underrepresented students, and offering training on equity and inclusion. Events in the 2010s pushed DEI even further, with protests in Ferguson in 2014 and the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement highlighted systematic racism. In 2020, George Floyd's murder led to widespread commitments by universities to adopt anti-racist policies and expand DEI efforts. These offices were designed to improve the overall campus environment and make sure all students had equal opportunities to succeed. For many, DEI became a core identity of higher education. College efforts regarding DEI were so prominent that in 2024, Cal State LA and Loyola Marymount University were honored with the Higher Education Excellence and Diversity Award from Insight into Diversity magazine, recognizing their commitment to fostering inclusive campus environments. According to the Utah Valley University, DEI programs report a 6 to 10% higher retention rate for first-generation and minority students. Over a decade, the university's DEI initiatives led to a 10% increase in retention rates for first-generation college students. Additionally, a study published in the Journal of Higher Education found that students who interact with peers from different ethnic and racial backgrounds develop more positive academic and social self-concepts, graduate at higher rates, and achieve superior leadership skills and exhibit higher levels of civic involvement. But in recent years, DEI has come under fire. Let's take a close look at how the political backlash these programs are now facing. In his first 2 days of office, President Donald Trump signed executive orders with the goal of dismantling DEI initiatives across the federal government. Executive Order 14173 formally revoked Executive Order 11246, which was an order that had prohibited federal contractors from discriminating in employment and required affirmative action. Invoking them effectively rescinded mandates for diversity, equity, and inclusion for federal hires and contractors, delegating enforcement authority and methodically dismantling DEI initiatives. Meanwhile, Executive Order 14151 initiated a multi-stage removal of federal DEI initiatives and personnel. It comprised the dismantling of DEI offices, purging government websites of DEI content, and much more. Then, in 2023, Governor Ron DeSantis signed Florida's Senate Bill 266, which banned the use of state or federal funds for DEI programs in public colleges and universities. According to Alligator.com, an independent student-owned newspaper created to serve the University of Florida, the University of Florida closed its Center for Inclusion and Multicultural Engagement, cutting 13 full-time DEI positions and eliminating faculty administrative appointments. Yet, according to the WUSF Public Media, a listener-supported NPR station owned and operated by the University of South Florida, students and faculty protested, warning that these changes could undermine campus diversity and student support. The graph below breaks down how the money budgeted for DEI was used and why they may have cut these fundings. But second example, beyond Florida in North Carolina, the state legislature passed 3 bills in June of 2025, aiming to restrict DEI programs in public schools, universities, and state government. These bills include House Bill 171, Senate Bill 227, and Senate Bill 558. According to advancedcarolina.org, the legislation seeks to eliminate DEI offices, staff, and training requirements. In response, Governor Josh Stein vetoed the bills on July 3, 2025, citing them as a distraction from more pressing issues facing the state. However, the vetoes have not halted the ongoing debates and actions surrounding DEI initiatives in the state. But It's important to note that not every state is restricting DEI. Let's examine a state that promotes DEI in higher education. In 2025, California State Assembly passed Senate Concurrent Resolution 89, affirming the state's commitment to DEI principles. The resolution encouraged policymakers at local, state, and federal levels to adopt and uphold DEI principles in various sectors, including education. So, with these new bans placed on DEI after the inauguration of President Donald Trump, colleges are attempting different ways to adapt to the changes. Some have completely shut down their DEI offices. Others are rebranding, changing the name of their office, or shifting DEI responsibilities into other departments like student affairs or human resources. The idea is to preserve at least some support services without violating the law. According to CT Insider, the closures have evoked strong reactions from students and faculty, many of whom view these centers as vital support systems. At Sacred Heart University, the closure of its multicultural and sexuality and gender equity centers left students feeling disconnected and unsupported, especially those from minority backgrounds. This brings up an important question. Are DEI programs even effective anymore? Well, a survey by Best Colleges found that 55% of students would consider transferring from a college that abolished DEI initiatives, and 59% would reevaluate their enrollment if they eliminated them. Students have expressed that DEI programs are vital for fostering a sense of belonging and support, especially for underrepresented groups. For instance, Corey Davis and Navon Woods from Kent State University describe multicultural centers as lifelines, essential for their academic and personal well-being. However, some students and commoners argue that DEI programs may not effectively address underlying issues of discrimination and bias, suggesting that the focus should be on broader educational reforms. So, where does this all leave us? To conclude, DEI has played a crucial role in US higher education for decades, improving representation, belonging, and student success. But today, political action is reshaping what DEI looks like, from complete elimination in some states to quiet adaptation in others. The structure of DEI is being altered, and soon its effectiveness will as well. The future of DEI will depend on legal battles, public opinion, and leadership at individual universities. Some schools may find creative ways to continue inclusion work, while others may abandon it entirely based on all the examples we've discussed earlier. However, it is important to note that what's at stake is bigger than just college programs. It's about what values we want higher education to represent. How we handle DEI now will shape not only campus culture, but also our country's broader commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion in the decades ahead. These are my works cited, and thank you so much for listening. That concludes my presentation. I'd love to hear any questions.
Tiffany, thank you so much for that presentation. Some questions have come up, and it is interesting that your topic is just so very top of mind and timely. And so with so many active debates and challenges that were occurring probably daily, at least weekly during the time that you were working on this project, how did it feel to be so closely plugged into the topic as shifts were occurring in real time? And how did that impact your project?
It impacted my project greatly because I always had to do new research every day to keep up with all the current events and to make sure that I was stating the most factual information that I could to make sure I wasn't misinforming anybody on what was going on. I got a lot of help from my mentor, Jacob Bennett, in terms of keeping up with current events because he's also a teacher and he teaches these subjects to his students. So it was really informative to work with him. But beyond just that, because I'm a senior in high school, I also felt a personal connection to what is happening in colleges and higher education because that's going to be my life very, very soon, which is why I'm so passionate about this topic. And I want to see changes. I want to see improvements for the future.
Yeah, wow. It just must have been just active every day. I can't imagine. And so as a senior heading into college pretty soon, and obviously seeing on your slides that there is a majority of student support for DEI initiatives, how might students who either are in college right now or heading into college influence the direction of DEI in their own campuses?
I mentioned it briefly, and in multiple slides, that student activism is incredibly important. It's shown up in past history where student strikes have led to changes in curriculum. And I believe currently, if students do want to influence the direction of DI in their own campuses, they can have peaceful protests. We've seen that a lot throughout history where everyone connects as a community and fights for a change. It has led to some results, but obviously it's not a guarantee. Beyond just peaceful protests, I also believe that students can directly work on campus, founding clubs, and giving opportunities to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and show that they support the people on their campus. And even if higher administration might not follow that and offer them that support, as students, they will support each other because students are there for other students.
Thank you for that last question. As you were going through clearly so many different resources, and thank you for sharing the works cited slide, how did you go about evaluating which sources to read? With this topic specifically, I'm sure many were kind of rife with leanings in either direction. Did your mentor share any tips for how to evaluate sources for bias and how to come to your own conclusion?
That's an amazing question. It was definitely one of my biggest concerns going into this topic because I wanted to try to stay as objective as possible. I'm not trying to promote one side or the other. I'm just trying to say what's been happening in the world to keep people informed. And my mentor was definitely a very big help for this. He recommended me a lot of different sources. And whenever I was confused and conflicted whether this article might be leaning, I showed it to him and he let me know maybe you should include this part or maybe you should scrap the article entirely. But on my own personal level, I try to find sources with statistics. As in my presentation, I brought up a lot of percentages and a lot of graphs because I feel like that's the more objective way to analyze it instead of taking people's accounts and other factors that aren't necessarily factual.
Thank you for that, especially on topics like this. It must be very hard to find, truly, non-leaning sources. So I'm glad that you got some skills, you built some skills in doing that. That will help you in the future for sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Tiffany, for that really informative presentation.